Ooh, we're going to set some tongues wagging with this one, I think.
Is there some magic that happens when you've got your master's degree?
Yes, I want my brain surgeon to be very well educated. And then there are the Van Wilders of the world that enjoy the university lifestyle. And
I know that he took his bag with him. I thought that's odd, and we never saw him again.
Oh, that's a hurtful comparison.
Like if you spent 6 years at university and you haven't yet had a pair of steel cap shoes on at any point in your life, to know and not to do is not to know at all. So Lauren, here we are, episode 4. Eh? Who would have thought?
A month ago, 4 episodes seemed a long way away, but it's come pretty quickly, really.
Our little old podcast. So today's serious question. If you want to be successful in commercial construction, do you or should you do a master's degree?
Oh.
Or should you do a degree at all?
Oh, we're going to set some tongues wagging with this one, I think.
Well, we bring it up because it's a question that we often get asked, particularly about the master's degree. People often ask, should I do my master's degree? I normally give a pretty swift and short answer, but let's unpack it today.
It's good. I must say the question has popped up in a couple of the other episodes, and it's a question that people that have been kind enough to listen and say something about it have said, oh, when are you doing this one? So one word takes about 1 second, so let's see if we can make a full episode out of it.
So I'll start with a couple of stories, as always. The first and probably most of one of the most interesting discussions I've had in a while was with someone who is a senior CA for a well-known builder, and probably not far off stepping into the role of project manager, and she doesn't have a degree at all.
Ooh.
So the story goes, she came over from the UK, started working as a receptionist or office manager or general admin for a builder, just sort of got a job as you do when you're a backpacker and applied to some things on Seek, and they obviously saw that she had something about her. Communication, drive, passion, give 100% at everything that she does. And they said to her one day, why don't you go and work with our estimators and sort of help out there a bit and see how you find it? And she just took to it and did really well. And they recommended that she go and do her diploma of construction, which she started doing part-time. And she was just doing more and more and more and doing really well. And then they said to her, why don't you go and join a project team as a junior contract admin? And I guess the rest is history. So fast forward 5 years, she's with a different company now, which is just finishing a $50 million job running lead CA on it. And contractors follow her around projects. Like she's told me stories that some of her subbies will say, we'll only do that project if you're on it.
Great story.
And let's contrast that to a different conversation you and I have had with a lovely young man that we met a little while back, who is finishing his master's degree, still haven't done a day's work in the industry, struggling to get his foot through the door. And when we asked him why he's doing his master's degree, he said, well, because I felt like I needed to do it to be worthy.
He really felt that the master's degree was going to get him that job, that it was the answer to all of what he saw as problems as such.
Yeah. So, and then as well, a different conversation I had last week, as someone asked for my advice. This person is 3 years post-grad and doing really well as a contract administrator, working for a very well-regarded builder on some really good projects. Everything's going well, but he's still got it in the back of his mind. Should I do the masters? Is it going to help me? Is it going to make me better? Is it going to open more doors for me? Is there something behind the veil that is there some magic that happens when you've got your master's degree?
Man behind the curtain. Is it a bit of FOMO, do you think? Like what's over there that I haven't done yet that I see people are doing? Yeah.
I think it's a bit of FOMO. I think people that are really passionate about their careers and really driven, they wonder whether it's worthwhile doing, whether it'll make a difference.
Is it going to take them places?
Yeah.
I mean, I did a master's early in my career, and I'm in a different career, a more academic career at that time in education. And I was looking for the answer to that question: is there more? Is there more I should know? Is there more I should be doing? Yeah.
Yeah. So let's unpack all of this stuff a little bit more. So let's talk first of all about why it's good to have a degree, or why this barrier exists in the industry. What do you think?
Look, I think, the teacher in me wants to talk about, the value of education, and that it gives us an opportunity, particularly a degree. It gives us some time to learn about an industry and a career pathway that we're interested in, and basically see if it's for us. I think, the few years you take in your degree, and hopefully you're both learning academically and working practically, which we'll talk more about later. But it's that great opportunity to really start to commit to something and see if it's for you, and it's not too late to turn around and do something slightly different or make adjustments to do what you want to do, because you've had that chance to try it out.
No, absolutely. I also think it's very important there has to be a barrier to entry to the commercial construction industry. It's a difficult industry. It's an industry that's full of risk, and we can ill afford a high turnover of people in the industry and bad practice. Yeah. And I think traditionally, if you look at industries that don't have barriers of entry, there's often those two things exist. Lots of turnover at the bottom, people having a crack coming in and out of it, and lots of bad practice. And sadly, we can use our own industry, recruitment, as a prime example of that. And real estate, we often get painted with the same brush.
Oh, that's a hurtful comparison.
We don't wear those god awful suits anymore. We used to back in the day, but I don't even own a suit anymore. But anyway, I digress. If you think about, let's say, recruitment, I mean, some of the stories I can tell you, like I remember years ago when I worked at a business, we hired someone as a trainee recruitment consultant. He started at 9 a.m. and then he went for lunch. And I know that he took his bag with him. I thought, that's odd, and we never saw him again. Recruitment career lasted 4 hours. So if you look at recruitment and real estate, you'd often see this big, people doing it for anything from 4 hours to 2 years, and then that's it. Then they exit. And we can you imagine if that was it was like that in commercial construction? Like if we just said to anyone can have a crack at estimating, or anyone can have a crack at being a junior contract admin or project coordinator, we'll have lots of people put their hands up. So I'll give it a go. So you'll have a massive churn, and we just can't afford that.
Projects would suffer. That's interesting that you bring that up. When I look at people's profiles, I rarely see people in the industry that have worked for a year or two and move out of it. But I do see people that have the degree and never enter it.
That's interesting. But we don't see, from what I can see, and having been in the industry 19 years on the 5th of June this year.
Showing your age.
And best part of 10 years in commercial construction here. And I think we don't see that sort of churn, and most people that do the degree tend to stay. People will move companies, and people will move within the broader sector of commercial construction, whether it being client side or different things, but people tend to stay in it because you feel you've made that commitment at the front end. You've probably had some time to think through it to be able to make the commitment to spend the money on doing a degree and spending the 4 years. And then once you're into it, you start earning some decent money that you probably couldn't earn as easily, not easily, but you can't translate that those earnings into a different sector as easily. So all those things are good for the industry. But with that comes then, I think, a whole lot of misconceptions about the value of tertiary education and construction.
And particularly the master's degree, but yes, even the idea that the degree is the be all and end all, and that the degree will open a door for you and nothing else is needed.
So let's talk about where these drivers come from. I think one of the big drivers of it is, as a society, we value education really highly.
Yeah.
So and different cultures value it even more so. If I think about my own experiences growing up in South Africa, we valued university education and degrees really highly because not everyone had the opportunity to do them.
Yeah.
So if we think about countries like India, countries like China, the Middle East, I often feel like, and even if you just talk to people and even some of the films we see, traditionally people that didn't have the opportunity to do have tertiary education growing up, they want their children to have that.
Yeah.
But then mistakenly they then believe that as soon as their son or daughter have a degree or master's degree, then the whole world opens up for them. And commercial construction in Australia, that's just definitely not the case. And I think that's where the pitfalls and the danger is sometimes, that you think if you just have this piece of paper, then everything will be okay. And then there's also then, if we think about the difference between, I think it's dangerous to paint all of this stuff with the same brush, in terms of the importance of a high level education. So if we think about the medical field, or we think about science, so you think about a research scientist of some sort, or you think about a doctor, well, that's where in academic professions like that's where higher education is critically important.
Yes, I want my brain surgeon to be very well educated.
Yes.
And I want him to be very up to date with the latest research, and it's all very, very important and technical and necessary.
But you also want the builder that's built the building that you're in to be highly educated and good at what they do, right? But where I think the difference is that if we think about the link between the universities and the industry, I think it's closer. If you think about people that do cancer research, you get the sense that the universities are really closely connected in terms of the research and the academic aspect of it, and the real world. There's a close link between the universities and the sector. But I think there's also worthwhile talking about the difference between, data-based or skills-based. What did we say earlier?
Skills and content.
Skills and content.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think when you're talking about medicine and science and things like that, it is so content-based. The only way to get better is to keep studying or learning from those who study. But when a field is very practical, like construction is, the way to get better is perhaps not to do that, but actually to be in the field and learning about how it actually works.
Yeah, 100%, and we're going to get to that in a bit more detail. So I think what then happens is then when we just look at everything with a broad brush, you think, well, if it's important for a brain surgeon or whoever to go and do a PhD, then maybe I should go and do that in construction as well. And you're like, well, the two is not the same. The context of it is not the same.
True.
And I think it's then important to put it in a proper context in terms of what the industry demands and what the industry requires. In construction is different, in medicine is different, in science is different, in different sectors. It's not all the same. And this is where the problem comes in.
And do you think that the universities kind of continue that? I'm going to use the word myth, and that's perhaps unfair, but is the university responsible maybe for selling this idea that the master's degree in construction, but also in other areas, is the key to career success?
Well, someone told me the other day, and I don't know if this is fact, but it's what I've been told, is that one prominent university in Melbourne made $300 million profit last year. So of course it is. Of course it's in their interest to. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with nothing wrong with making profit, but the industry, the universities are masters at marketing and pushing degrees onto people, and it's probably quite easy because no one would say education is unimportant.
Exactly, it's a hard argument to make. Yeah.
And particularly when they take those marketing strategies into overseas countries, I think it's like shooting fish in a barrel. It's pretty easy to convince people that. More education is of course going to be better. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. But then how many people? Again, we spoke to a university lecturer last week that gave us some numbers, and I'm not gonna quote them on here, but the amount of master's students that are working in industry, or not students, masters, graduates, very small.
It's very small, yeah. Sad, really. Yeah.
And I mean, I remember years and years ago, I interviewed this guy who had a PhD degree. He did like a thesis on concrete cancer or something, but worked at a convenience store and never had a day's work in the industry. And that's something you don't see in the medical field.
No, absolutely not. No, even in teaching, you can't finish your degree without having done some formal practice. Yeah.
So if we think the reasons why people do degrees beyond the bachelor, if you think about master's degree, one of the main reasons in Australia is people do it to get their visa, and that's fair enough. Like, you know, they've come from India or wherever, and they've done their bachelor's degree over there, and then they get their student visa so they can do their master's here, and that then gives them a clear pathway to permanent residency and work in Australia. That's fair enough. You know, that's a good way to get here and do it that way. Beyond that, I think it's pressures from cultural and society pressures, and pressures from the universities that do a good sell on it.
Look, and there's probably a couple of other reasons too. I mean, there are people that genuinely enjoy learning, and then there are the Van Wilders of the world that enjoy the university lifestyle and would like to hang on to that capacity to party all night and study for part of the day for as long as possible.
Well, I think let's just get this out of the way, because I made a note here. We want to talk about what is the worst mistake you can probably make. And in my opinion, the worst mistake you can make is to do your bachelor's degree and your master's degree, and that's 6 years, and then go, all right, now I'm going to go and get a job. Yeah. And that is how not to do it. Like, if you spend 6 years at university and you haven't yet had a pair of steel cap shoes on at any point in your life, that's going to be difficult.
I think what you think is putting you in an advantage by having that additional qualification actually puts you at a disadvantage, because you're not going to be able to talk about construction in the same way as a third-year construction management student who has done some time on site can talk about it.
Yeah. So if we then talk about the reasons why it's important to get into the industry and construction and not just rely on the tertiary education, I think there's a big difference. If we talk about education does not just have to mean formal education, going to university.
True.
You never stop learning. Once you're in the job, that's where most will tell you that's where the real learning begins. And data retention doesn't equate to knowledge.
Yes.
And this is something I think that people often don't really think about. Just because you know something and can regurgitate it back to someone or write it down on a piece of paper doesn't mean you know it.
True.
There's this ancient Chinese proverb that says to know and not to do is not to know at all.
I like that.
And I think it's like we can let's use two analogies. One is of surfing. Like you can watch all the YouTube videos you like, and you can read all the textbooks that have ever been written about surfing. In a moment that you step on that surfboard, you're going to fall off almost immediately.
True.
Another way of thinking about it is that if these are for people that do this sort of 4 to 6 years of study before they even step into the industry. It's like imagine if you're an alien living on a different planet. I'm going to go out there now. We're going to go take this. I'll let you into how my head works sometimes. Let's say you live on a different planet and someone gives you a handbook to successful life on Earth. Right? It's gonna be pretty simple when you write it down. Like, all right, so what do you need to do to be healthy? Well, it's not rocket science. You can write it down on a piece of paper. Well, eat these things, do these exercises. Yeah, don't eat these things. Don't drink these things. How do you manage relationships? Well, do this, say this. So you can write a handbook as to how to live a successful life on planet Earth. And if you're sitting on a different planet, you go, okay, well, we just need to do all these things. It should be right. And then the moment you hit planet Earth and you've been here for a week, and you're sitting at the pub and you're 6 beers deep.
Oops. It wasn't in the handbook.
Tucking into your burger and fries, you'd be like, well, what happened here? It's not so easy, is it? And what's that saying? It's easy to say, hard to do. And I think that's a lot of it when we talk about education and transferring that into the real world. Because what is the difference? Like when there's two things that are removed from education in a formal education setting. One is variables and dynamic variables that change all the time, and two is emotion.
Absolutely.
So, you can do all of this study and know exactly how to deal with certain situations as a contract administrator or a project manager, and you're running this big project. Everything is going well, and then your carpenter, you turn up on one Monday morning and your carpentry subcontractor has gone bankrupt.
Yeah.
Where's your thesis now?
Yeah.
And now you need to make phone calls. Now it's about managing everyone's emotions on site, managing your own emotions, managing the client, the amount of different variables and people and situations that you have to take into account, from people to staff to emotions to money to the practicalities of dealing with that situation on a complicated project is infinite. So and that's where the rubber hits the road in terms of real world experience. If you've never been part of that, even if you're just a cadet and sort of in amongst it, not responsible for all of it, that's where the learning comes from.
These are the things you can't learn from a book.
It's like it's like tertiary education. It gives you a framework and a plan, but like Mike Tyson famously said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And then the plan goes out the window.
So real life and the real life of someone working in construction is that punch in the face.
Pretty much. So let's talk then about what's important. So so I think it's not unimportant. The education part, I don't want people to think that we say it doesn't matter or it's not important at all. I think it is important. I just want people to put it in its right place, in its rightful place, where it belongs in the context of your career as far as it relates to commercial construction in Australia.
I think, if that was all that mattered, then there are people out there with all of those degrees that aren't in the industry yet would have jobs. And the first example you gave of the woman, the senior contract administrator who didn't have the degree but was successful in the industry, that wouldn't exist either. So real life is telling us while your degree is important, there are more important things.
So I think what's important in the context of this degree is, number one, that you make a commitment to the industry and or to your career path. And again, coming back to some of the points we made in the last episode of our podcast, it's that investment that employers have to make in you. They have to invest in you, and they want to balance risk or mitigate risk when they make the investment. And at least if you've shown you're doing your degree, that's one thing that's taken that lowers the risk in their eyes, because you committed to doing it. So in terms of whatever degree you do, it's the commitment. But more than that, it's about then getting real world experience and focusing, in my opinion, on your soft skills. It's focusing on the communication. It's focusing on how you build relationships with people. It's focusing on how you manage yourself, how you manage your own your own emotions and your own time and being organised, and then it's like getting out there, getting the real world experience practically in terms of buildability of projects, so that you can actually, how many times do we have these discussions with, I've asked a question so many times in the last couple of weeks in preparation of this episode with people about what they learned at university and how relevant it is in terms of the content. And most people have said it was most of what they learned at university they will never ever use in the real world.
Yeah.
So the content that you learn is not really, I don't know what they teach people at university or what the problem is, but there seems to be a disconnect in terms of a lot of the content that you learn at university and the real world. So the content's not so important. It's the commitment that you make by doing the degree, and then it's about getting a job as soon as possible.
Getting out there, getting real.
Yeah, it's like we've been dealing with this. We can barely call him a cadet. He just finished high school, I think, year before last. This young kid that asked us for help, and he's managed to get a job somewhere now, but he's in his first year and he's like knocking down doors to get a job somewhere. And he's got doors slammed in his face every which way he turned, because he's just so young and he's just so inexperienced, but he kept knocking. We gave him some good advice, and he called me on Friday saying got a job with a fit-out company. And he's in his year one. Yeah, he's got the right attitude. Yeah. Like he's getting in there. Yeah. Getting amongst it, getting the real experience.
He understands that the piece of paper isn't enough to guarantee him a successful career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And he'll go far.
Yeah, he wants to learn from being on there, and certainly the things that you're talking about as being important are not the things you're learning in the degree, and I think we see that in some of the people that we work with. And it's been interesting for me coming into this field as a recruiter now. There's a handful of people that I used to teach that are in the field that I've kind of reconnected with in a different way, and one of them is working in the field. He's a very successful contract administrator for quite a big company, and he has a diploma. And so, some people think that maybe, there'll be doors closed to you if you have the diploma. But what this I have to say young man now, in my mind there's still a kid involved, what he has in spades and has always had for as long as I can remember, I think I knew him for about, almost his entire high school career, was he had communication skills. Terrific attitude. He could talk to anyone. He showed an interest in everybody that he was talking to. He was warm, he was friendly, and he could talk to different people on different levels, and he was always able to do that. Had the gift, you might call it the gift of the gab. He always had that. And so he's taken that, quite natural personality skill, and he's honed it from the experience that he had, and it's been made him more successful than many people that have the degree and the masters.
I think he got his first job before he even finished the diploma. I'm still not even sure. And I think I know who you're talking about. I'm not even sure if you've ever finished that diploma or not. But, it just shows you can have someone with 3/4 of a diploma that can be more successful than someone that's got a master's degree. And that's how this industry is set up. There's no governing body that tells, a builder's got to have a builder's license, but the employee doesn't need to have a license. So as far as I know, there's no overarching governing body that says you have to have this degree or you have to have that. That's just the industry sets the standards for what it wants to accept and what it doesn't want to accept. And as far as the degree is concerned, once you turn up at an interview, or once you go for your first job, most people just say, okay, you've done a degree, you think, we'll put that to one side. Let's talk about who are you. It's about the person, it's not about their degree. So I think if you can focus on the soft skills, focus on communication, all those things that you said, that's the most important thing. And then also knowing the industry.
And this is true, and sometimes a more practical or more practically based course can give you a better understanding of that. So when we were researching for this episode, and we do, obviously we tried to talk to people with boots on the ground. I found someone who I'd, been friendly with, spoken to for a little while, and I noticed that he had both the diploma and the degree. And so I asked him, I said, which was more useful to you at the end of the day, you know, having done your diploma and having done your degree, which was more useful? And he said, oh my goodness, the diploma was so much more useful to me, because he said it was very, very practical. And he said it was quite intense, a very intense year of learning about things, very engaging, very, very practical, very hands-on. And he said, and then he went into the degree, which he found to be, he said, less interesting, less challenging, and less relevant.
Yeah, I think I asked that question to about 30 people in the last 2 weeks, and almost all of them told me that they, number one, enjoyed the diploma more, and they found it more valuable. But we have to say we're asking this question to people that are working as either project coordinators or contract administrators or project managers for commercial builders. That might be different if your clients are or in other sectors, but in terms of real world on-site construction experience, I think the diploma is great. So let's just talk very briefly about the main so diploma of construction is one. And then if we talk about bachelor's degrees, the main degrees that people have is a civil engineering degree, architecture degree, construction management degree, and then just a general project management degree. So people might be asking, well, which one should I pick, and which one is more important, and which one is better than the best of all of them? And I don't think it really. I don't think there's a straight answer to that, and I don't think it really matters, to be honest. The one that I would sort of strike off that list as the generic project management degree, I don't think is. I don't think it's as valuable, and often people may do that when they still haven't decided they're going to do construction, because you can use that degree in many other industries as well, whether it's IT or whatever. It's probably the least focused of them. I think the civil engineering degree is obviously more engineering focused, but at the end of the day, in the grand scheme of things, if you zoom out and you look at your career, your whole career, it doesn't really matter. Like, I've seen people that have any of those 5 things: diploma, architecture degree, project management degree, civil engineering degree, and commercial construction management degree. I've seen all of those people be successful in all fields. Yeah. Like, I've seen them be project managers, I've seen them, even some of them being site managers, I've seen them being design managers, I've seen them be, I've seen people be design managers that doesn't necessarily have an architecture degree. And then I've seen people be contract administrators with architecture degrees. Like, I think it's just once you get in, it doesn't really matter so much anymore, because the content of the degree becomes less relevant as you get into the industry. So
the real learning about the industry starts after that's done.
The exposure that you get to the industry in your first 2 to 5 years is more important than any degree that you have. So if you were to say, if you take someone, they finish school, and then let's take a 6-year span. So let's say person A didn't do any work in construction. They worked at McDonald's and at Rebel Sport, and then they spend 6 years. Now they've got a master's degree. And then you have person B that's done a diploma and got their first job part-time in the first year of their diploma. That person will probably be almost a project manager if they're really good at what they do. Maybe possibly not quite, but be close to, depending on how big the company is and where they're working. But it could be a really good CA in 6 years' time. Yeah. With the other person that's going to walk into the office and you say, have you used JobPack before? And they'll say, what's that? Yeah. So that's where the difference comes in, is that get a job first. Look, if it was me, if I was to standing on the starting line, just having just finished high school and have to make a decision, what I would do, this is not necessarily a right or wrong way, but what I would do is I'll go and do the diploma, and I would try and get a job as soon as possible with a builder. If I can get a job with a head contractor, and I'll keep knocking down doors and get that job as soon as possible. Finish the diploma, and then if you then go and do your bachelor's degree, you can do it in 2 years.
You knock a year off it, yeah.
But then make the decision. I mean, look, there is an argument to say that a bachelor's degree does to a degree maybe open some doors for you if you need doors open for you, or just on the basis of your CV.
Yeah.
Like if once you sit in front of someone, they forget about the tertiary education because they see who's in front of them.
Yeah.
But if you have a bachelor's degree, you might get in certain places. You might get the interview where if you didn't have it, you wouldn't get an interview. Because certain people still have a bias towards one thing or another. Certain people have a bias towards a particular university. If they've gone to RMIT, they might value that course higher than others. But you can't do that on the basis of just getting an interview here or there. I think fundamentally, if you can, and this other person who we've used as a case study has proven it. $50 million lead CA on a $50 million job with demonstrated outcomes.
Yeah.
Do you think if she goes to any of the other builders for an interview, they're going to go, look, you're great and you've done so well in your career and you've got all this experience and all of these subbies know you, and we can talk about all of your outcomes for the next hour. If only you had a bachelor's degree. Sorry.
Can't see that happening. Yeah. Yeah, I think what it's proving is there are many pathways in, but you have to have those soft skills to be successful, no matter how you get in there. And if you get your foot in the door and you can prove that you have them, then success is yours.
So let's ask the question. If you want to be successful in commercial construction, should you do a master's degree? I'm just going to go and say no, probably not. I think if you want to do a master's degree, then if you enjoy studying and want to do it for your own enjoyment, perfect, can go and do it, no problem with that. If you want to do it because you've done it because that's your entry point into Australia with a visa, then fair enough. Or if you've already done it, fair enough. But is it going to get you a better job? I'd say no.
No, look, I think, can I just put one caveat on that? Is I do see people that have been in the industry for a while that have undertaken like a construction law or a business degree because they're in, perhaps an upper tier space, or they're looking to take on quite a specific role within the company that has a specific focus. And if that's for you, by all means.
Yeah, no, that's different. I think that's probably, I forgot to mention that. Like, yes, you see that sometimes people go into and they get really stuck into the contract law. They might become on their path to become a commercial manager or a contracts manager, and they take on the law part of it. They want to be really good at construction law. So if we talk about construction law, well, that's a black and white, that's a content heavy, that's a content based skill set. So be able to retain and data in that sense, that's a valuable skill, and that's critical. So if you want to be the guru guy in your company that they call in when it comes to contract law, that's different. Then go and do that master's, or go do your construction law. That's a different kettle of fish. So people go and do that, and quite a few people I've seen do that, and they do really well at it. So, but then you go and do the most people that do that whilst they're already in the job. Exactly. And the job requires them. They can see the outcome. They look at the course content and they go, okay, this is going to be really valuable for me to do that. Yeah. They're not working at McDonald's thinking they're going to get a better job if they've done this degree. Exactly. So that's the caveat. But I think focusing on real world experience, focusing on your communication skills, your relationship building skills, your practical skills, all those things. The real world experience will always trump the formal education. It's important, but it's not the be all and end all.
True.
Thanks for listening.